You have two people with a very different internal experience, but the same household, and they somehow need to work as a team around this baby that is the first thing in their lives that they cannot walk away from. You can walk away from a job, you can walk away from the house you live in, you can walk away from the in-laws, you can say, I'm not having any of this. But when you're a couple and you've decided to have a baby, which obviously usually happens because you're stable and you want to have a family, you're in it for the long run, to then face the irony of that being the thing that has exploded your relationship and maybe pushed you as far apart as you've ever been, that really is very humbling, but it also is an amazing opportunity to rebuild and to build a really strong foundation around supporting each other.
Welcome to the Motherhood Clinic, a podcast about caring for mothers after childbirth, led by clinical experience and real-life stories. If you're a new mom and ever asked yourself, is what I'm going through normal? Should I be worried? Or who should I ask for help? This podcast is for you. It's for anyone navigating those early weeks, months, or even years after having a baby. Each episode brings together voices from across the motherhood journey, from clinicians, experts, and mothers from all walks of life. We're here to help you feel more empowered in your unique motherhood journey. We believe in a better start to motherhood.
Vanessa, thanks for coming back onto the discussion. You are the co-founder of Mothering Minds, which provides therapy to parents. This is the second conversation in a two-part series where we talked about, first of all, is this normal? Is what parents go through in their motherhood and parenting journey normal? How to contextualize that, why you guys exist. This conversation is going to be a bit more of a practical how-to. So if I've answered this question of, is this normal? And I thought, you know what, I do want to get help and I don't want to wait until I redline. How do I get the practical help that I need? So this is going to be very much a practical conversation. We're going to talk about three things. Number one, when does someone seek support? What are some of the signs? What are some of the red flags? How do I self-identify, or how do I, as a partner, help my partner if I feel like they're going through something? So how to refer other people. Then we'll talk a bit about what does the system look like today. This is not to bash what we have, because I think what we have today is also great and we're lucky to have that. But just understanding the reality of the barriers in the current system. What does it do? What doesn't it do? And then we'll talk about Mothering Minds and what is it you guys offer and what is the value of therapy or support. And we'll talk about, in particular, you provide couples support as well, not just for mothers, right? Because as we will talk about, motherhood isn't just about mothers, right? So how do we, what kind of dynamic does that present? So these are the three things we'll step through. So maybe let's jump into that first conversation, Vanessa. We talked about this on the first briefly, but when should someone seek support for their mental health? What are some of the signs they should be looking out for?
Yeah, obviously this is very individual. I mean, an interesting stat from our end is that we have about 20% of our inquiries are second-time parents who get in touch preventatively. And that's a really common theme. So they will get in touch, some even sort of before they try conceiving the second child, some during pregnancy. And they say, we had a really rough time first time round, and we just want to make sure we've got support in place this time, and have already established a relationship with a therapist, basically someone on speed dial, knowing that the road ahead is bumpy. So that's sort of what we're learning from people who've been through it before, who obviously self-assessing and deciding that they want to get in touch before things get difficult. For first-time parents, that's not the case, because you don't know what you don't know. And so a lot of people get in touch when they're at crisis point, but we would love to see more people who get in touch when they're thinking about having kids, when they've just found out they're pregnant. And at that point, just to go and speak to a therapist about what their mental health looks like at a calm state and what's important to them and what they're expecting. And then not necessarily sort of continue with weekly sessions, but just to have established that first line of, here's someone to talk to if I need it in future. for people that sort of are screening in terms of symptoms, we usually say to look out for anything that impacts your daily functioning. So you'll likely go through heightened anxiety. Your brain's changing, the amygdala in the first pregnancy enlarges, which is your threat detection center. So it's really normal to feel on high alert, to get quite worried about something that might have affected you or the baby. That's a biological change, but it doesn't mean that you have to manage that on your own. If it gets difficult to manage, if it impacts your sleep, if it impacts even your enjoyment of life, it's worth reaching out for some support. And it doesn't always have to be immediately therapeutic support. It can also be talking to a friend about it, letting your partner know that this is actually quite difficult, and maybe starting a little bit of a journaling practice so you can keep tabs on how you're feeling.
Great, great. No, really helpful advice there, Vanessa. Now, I'm going to play the stupid question again and ask, like, why is early support important? Why is it important to get support before a redliners?
So for this, actually, I really like to tell a story of one of our clients. She got in touch after she had her second, and she actually got in touch saying that she's had her second baby and she had a smooth birth, and she loves being with this baby and loves motherhood, and it's made her so sad about what it was like first time round for her, because she only then realized that after she had her first baby she had postnatal depression, and she didn't know until she
Yep.
had her second baby and realized, oh my goodness, this is what motherhood could feel like. I love life, I'm loving this baby, I'm loving being with this baby, and I'm so upset at how sad and miserable I was after my first. And I'm so upset about the kind of mother I was to my first, which obviously, you know, there's some self blame in there, but it's not her fault. But it just shows that there's grief to process if you leave it. You can leave it and you can just slog through and you can survive and you'll make it. Well, most people make it. We can't downplay the risk of sort of self-harm to the point of suicide. That still is the biggest killer for mothers in the first year postnatally in the UK. But a lot of mums just get through it and then they see the light of day sort of at some point. But why? Why do you need to do that? And you might actually have something to process when you come out the other end in terms of sadness over how long and how sad you were for how long.
Yeah, no, that's another great response. This concept of enduring versus enjoying. Now, again, there's an element, not to say that that's always a choice, right? But I think what you're talking about is setting yourself up in the best way that you can, not just have to endure it. And I think, again, going back to our first question of, is this normal? A lot of people, parents, mothers, fathers will expect that to be like, we just have to endure it. Like that's what you expect. And what we're presenting here is that doesn't always have to be the case. There will be challenges for sure, but what, the value, if I reflect on the same question, getting the right support that you think is, and that's be specific to you, might allow you some capacity to entertain more than just this enduring phase, and then again, there'll be the highs, there'll be the lows, but you kind of want to have that balance somewhere in between and know that there is some flex in the system. I know certainly as parents, we just had zero in the gas tank, and when you've got zero left, you can't then accommodate anything additional, or you end up doing that anyway, but then you're redlining. So I think for us personally, when I think about that question, it's like you're just trying to optimize your situation so that you can accommodate in the best way. That would kind of be my answer to my own question.
Yeah, I like that.
So, Vanessa, we've talked about when to seek support. There'll be various tools, as you mentioned, frameworks, questionnaires like the GAD-7, that what that will clinically diagnose. But there's also probably some useful questions that you can ask along the way, whether it's you and your partner having that conversation. And as you're saying, oftentimes it will be people self-identifying, or maybe even partners suggesting that they think their partners might need some support. So let's say that we've answered that question and we say, you know what, um, I would like to seek support and I want to be proactive and to get myself in the best possible situation before I redline. Let's turn our attention now to the system today. Let's say I've done that and I want to seek support. Let's talk through, what does the system look like today? The good, the bad, and the ugly. What are we dealing with today? And how do we make the most out of that? If we talk about the NHS in England today, what does that look like when people want to seek support?
Yeah, I think the first thing about it is that obviously for the NHS, thresholds are high because they need to respond to the most urgent cases. When you're looking at an economy of scarcity of staff and funding, then prioritizing anyone in severe crisis is understandable. And so that's really who will be seen, who will be cared for. The system is set up with a pathway for this. But it also means that a lot of people fall through the cracks, underreport, especially in the perinatal period, because there is a huge fear of coming across as a failure. There's a huge fear of having your baby taken away. These are not things that you can take lightly, especially when you're already struggling. And so often a sense of when to disclose, how to disclose is confusing for a lot of people in the NHS system. There isn't a lot of screening for this either. We all know the sort of stats that, you see someone while you're pregnant every other week almost, and then postnatally there's a single check-in at 6 weeks. And so there's a huge lack of just even opportunity to actually say it to someone. And this sense of you have to go and get up and get out and find a GP or a midwife or a health visitor and tell them, I'm really struggling, please do something. That's obviously a huge barrier. And so the system, unfortunately, it just is very specific and is quite fragmented and it's confusing. It is also quite a lot of a postcode lottery. If you've got a listening service, if you've got a perinatal mental health team, if you've got a pathway and you can even access it. So in some postcodes, you can be looked after and in others, not so much.
Mm. Well, there's a lot there. And I think, again, I think you paint a really good picture of some of the individual, community level, and systemic barriers that exist, right? And the reason we're wearing this, not just to kind of be naysayers and be negative, it's just to paint what is the reality of today's situation and to use that knowledge to then say, well, how do I then complement what is in? What is the onus on me as the mother or me as the family to augment that what exists, right? So if we're saying that most mothers will underreport, a lot of mothers sadly will have that fear that if I really told you how I felt, you would take my baby away, which is such a sad perception, because that is the moment to then seek help. So part of this conversation is challenging those very natural thoughts, emotions, and feelings to say that actually it won't just be you. And this is a very normal feeling. And it is also your opportunity to then raise to the relevant people to get support. Um, so hopefully, the more we say this, the more people will be like, actually, I've heard this said before, and maybe I should actually raise that. So let's turn our attention to, what can people do? Is there any advice you'd say that mothers and parents can do to take some onus on themselves, or some to feel empowered to then augment the system? Or how do they work with the system to get what they need?
Yeah, I think there's definitely ways of accessing the system. If you're educated around what what is screened for, and so if you're able to convey that what you're struggling with is impacting your functioning and is impacting your day-to-day life, that it has an impact on your relationships, communicating that very directly to the point can help with making sure that your request gets heard and gets sort of progressed along the system. if, like so many women, you have a tendency of, you might sort of hint at struggling, but then quite quickly sort of retract and say, oh, actually, but it is okay and it is fine, then that will go down as potentially to monitor, to check back in, but it likely won't make the cut. So to be able to convey the kind of symptoms that you're experiencing in a stark enough way to be heard can be really useful. Even if you're thinking to yourself, I sound like I'm complaining and I sound really dramatic. But often the forms sound really dramatic, and the scores, in the end, it's not your spoken sort of disclosure that will be recorded and passed on. It'll be some boxes that are ticked and a score that's been reached.
Yeah.
And if you don't reach it even by a couple of points, you're not going to be progressed along the sort of pathway of support.
Yeah, no, very helpful, Vanessa. We spoke with a lady called Catherine Lovewell. She wants to write a book called The F Word, and I thought, what's the F word? She's like, I'm fine. Not what I was thinking, because everyone says I'm fine. I'm fine. You know, mothers do it, guys do it all the time, and sometimes, and I understand the tension, because part of it is going back to our first conversation. Is part of it is the narrative you want to tell yourself, because if I tell myself things are a mess, I'm a shop, like that does affect your psyche. And sometimes you say, I'm fine, because you want to give yourself that sense of, yeah, I'll be okay, I'll be fine. And it's a very unique and personal challenge to say, I can hold those two in parallel. I can have like a view that I want to say how I feel, which might be shit, rubbish, to get the support I need. But I can also say that I'm working through this. And by using that narrative and by saying those things, I'm using that to get the support I need, so that I can be fine. So I think it's holding those two um, contradictory views, to not say just because you're reporting yourself as saying, but that is your way of working yourself to ensure that you are fine. So I'd love to talk a bit about, specifically about Mothering Minds, right? Vanessa, you are the co-founder of Mothering Minds, that provides, therapy for parents to address some of the challenges that exist with, the state system right now. And how do we do that? So what I'd love to talk about specifically, what is your approach to providing therapy? What do you offer? And there's a bigger topic that you also provide, which is couple support, not just for the mother. So I'd love to give you an opportunity to talk about what is Mothering Minds about, why do you exist, and then we'll jump into some of the approaches that you take. So over to you, Vanessa. Yeah.
Yeah, so we exist because of this gap that triage with the NHS has high thresholds, and a lot of people don't get seen that could really do with getting seen. It can prevent a lot of suffering. It can prevent a lot of further effects where the maternal mental health impacts the partner's mental health and the baby's development as well. So we feel that offering easy access, on-demand access to perinatal mental health support, one-to-one therapy with specialists, and couples therapy can actually save a lot of people a lot of grief and money down the line as well, sort of systemically money, because you don't have to address bigger issues. And also because obviously when you're in a better frame of mind, you just, your life works out better. So that's sort of the main service from our side. But our approach is quite, I think our approach is unique in that it's been built up from this intimate feedback we're getting from our clients. So we onboarded perinatal specialists who obviously trained in all these various ways. A lot of our therapists are previous midwives or even still work as midwives. They're previous doctors or people that have been in the perinatal space or maternal space and then moved into mental health. And so a lot of them bring incredible knowledge around this area. But being able to work with people that get in touch whenever they want, so from a self-reporting point of view, has for our therapists also opened up so much learning opportunity. And so we're building together a new approach to perinatal mental health. We're building something that is unique to the period, and addresses modern parenthood as well. So it's not sort of textbook learning, it's actually learning from the dozens and dozens of sessions that happen every week with Mothering Minds, the topics that come up. And that is an approach that I'm really proud of, because we're
Right.
not trying to make parents fit into a psychological model. We're not trying to make them fit into a CBT program. We're not trying to make them fit into any framework at all. We're building the framework around them, around what they're saying to us when they get in touch.
That's incredible, Vanessa. I'd love to, and we'll share more details for people to find out more about Mothering Minds and what you offer, because it does sound like an incredible journey, and what you're building sounds fantastic. And within that, you see, you offer one-to-one support. What I also was encouraged by reading into it was the couple support as well. And again, as we talk about the advent of motherhood and parenthood, isn't just a singular thing. Like, I think there'll be value obviously for one-to-one support, but there's also couple support, because oftentimes there'll be a couple involved with with babies. Not all the time, but obviously most of the time that'll be the case. And are there any insights that you can share in terms of the benefit that couples get by coming together versus the one-to-one, and what is the respective needs and value that you get from those two different types of dynamics happening at Mothering Minds?
Yeah, I love couples therapy for the perinatal period. I think that's a game changer. Women
Okay.
come to us for one-to-one support for their struggles, and most of them say that it really helps them, but it hardly ever happens that the partner doesn't come up in the sessions. A sense of being disconnected, a sense of not being on the same page. That's sort of one end of the spectrum, to a point of, I don't even know this person anymore. I don't feel supported at all. We do see single parents who come and they've gone the donor route, for example. And for these people, a support network is hugely important,
Mm,
because obviously, so they don't come on their own either. It's not, they don't come as a sort of island that speaks to us around raising children. Everybody that sees us, even if they see us for one-to-one therapy, actually sees us as part of a system. And this system is either providing for them or failing them.
mm,
And usually the closest person in the system is the partner. And if the
yeah,
partner is not on the same page, which is usually not a massive attitude problem, or a fault, a big personality flaw, it usually is down to a lack of education, a lack of training,
mm,
a lack of small but useful habits that should be in place, but you never needed before you had a baby. and
yeah.
um and then and so to come as a couple, and we have a lot of people that they see one therapist for one-to-one, and then they see a therapist for their couples therapy, even just a brief spate of a few sessions. People usually say that has helped so much at home, because you have
Mm,
two people with a very different internal experience, but the same household, and they somehow need to work as a team around this baby that is the first thing in their lives that they cannot walk away from. And you can't walk away. You can walk away from a job. You can walk away from the house you live in. You can walk away from the in-laws. You can say, I'm not having any of this.
yeah,
But
yeah,
when you're a couple and you've decided to have a baby, which obviously usually happens because you're stable and you love each other, and you want to have a family, you're in it for the long run, to then face the irony of that being the thing that has sort of exploded your relationship and maybe pushed you as far apart as you've ever been. That really is very humbling, but it also is an amazing opportunity to rebuild and to build a really strong foundation around supporting each other.
yeah. Vanessa, I think those are the words and experiences. I think you put into words the experience that every parent will feel. That contradiction, as you said,
Yeah.
um, I can absolutely identify, like, the reason you hopefully you have a child together is because you're in it for the long term. And exactly as you said, it's the first time you have to work together on something you can't walk away from, and that really hit us, like, oh shit, we've got to do this together now. And as you're saying, up until that point you've been able to accommodate completely different ways of doing things. And maybe that's actually what attracted you in the first place, the fact that you were like, the yin and the yang. But now it's saying that the same experience, the same baby, the same feelings will be interpreted very, very differently. I hear so much of our journey and what you've just said, and I think many listeners, I imagine, would do. So we've talked in this conversation, Vanessa, around when to seek support. What are some of the challenges today, and what the system looks like today, and what can you do to complement that? And we talked about Mothering Minds, and I'd love to give you an opportunity in a moment to kind of broadcast what you do, where people could find about you, and we'll share the links in the description below. So I'd love to round out this very helpful conversation, Vanessa, with a question, which is we've talked a lot about the value of mental health, the value of getting proactive help. So the question we like to ask a lot of guests is, what does a better start to motherhood look like? So given everything we talked about, given your own experiences, what would that look? What would a better start to motherhood look like for you, then, Vanessa?
Yeah, I think for people not to be so blindsided, ideally for that to be much more part of the communication that you of the narrative around it, of expectation around it, that you will go through something really transformative, that this will feel uncomfortable and painful a lot of the times, that this will make you question a lot of things about yourself, about your identity, about your purpose. It will make you question your relationship, but that this is a normal part of having a child. I mean, it's the most amazing thing we can do, is we can bring another life into this world and care for it. It's normal that this will sort of touch maybe the kind of most inner sanctum of our soul, and to feel that can be really frightening, but it's not unusual, and it's okay to have support for this. Actually, it's better if you do. And if that looks like a really supportive, understanding, non-judgmental friend, or your really wise older sister, it's great to have someone in your corner who you can share things with, especially things that you might feel don't really fit the social media narrative of eternally blissful and eternally calm, graceful parent. So if you find yourself quite far away from that idea, you're real, and social media is
Good,
not.
good,
So that would be really useful to be well informed about matrescence. There's a great book by Lucy Jones on matrescence. It can help to get a little bit of context around what you're going through, and to actually, if you have a partner, you're going into this as a team, stay as a team, communicate regularly, talk about your expectations and your goals. Um, po- Postnatally, that's more important than prenatally. Sort of, you don't
yeah.
know what you're going to face, but to stay connected, even in small ways, to prioritize that is would be a better start to parenthood, definitely.
Great. Vanessa, thank you so much for this really informative conversation. The last thing I'd love to do is give yourself an opportunity just to share, where do people find you? Where do people, like, what do they look for online? But again, from me, a big thank you. So Vanessa, please share more about where they can find more about Mothering Minds.
Yeah, the best way to get in touch is to go on our website, motheringminds.uk, all in one word, with .uk. And we have, basically, you can get in touch via a form. You can email us at hi@motheringminds.uk. We always love to hear from people, anyone really in this space. If you're interested in therapy, if you're interested in Mothering Minds, yeah, we'd love to hear from you.
Vanessa, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Patrick.